Welcome to the latest episode of Trojans Wire to the podcast, which is an in-house production of the website Trojans Wire. We are part of the College Wire Network. So first off, as I welcome back USC women's basketball analyst Cece Clay to our show. First off, we hope you've been watching our show, listening to our podcast with Lindsay Gottlieb. We got the coach. Cece got the coach. Went one-on-one for that interview. If you haven't yet watched it, you got to watch it. All right. Like that's our biggest get here on our Trojans Wired podcast. So Cece Clay going one-on-one with Lindsay Gottlieb. Make sure to listen to that show if you haven't yet done so. But now we pivot to our latest broadcast and some big breaking news on the USC women's basketball staff. Cece Clay, take it away. Your reaction. What does it mean for USC?
Okay, so I had to when I saw that, my mouth kind of dropped that Delhi would leave after he's been like a partner to Lindsay for so many years at Cal and at USC. And my thought on this is, I'm going to keep it as 100% real as I always do, and try not to be petty about this whole thing. But to me, when I look at the Delhi move, and it's nothing against Delhi, Delhi just did what Delhi felt he had to do. You know what I mean? I'm
Wendell
sure the
Farrell, just
offer,
for
yeah,
those who are uninitiated, Wendell Farrell going, leaving the
to
USC
South
staff.
Carolina.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that you got to go with wherever's best for you. However, I do think that and I'm going to keep it 100% real. I'm not, I have respect for Don Staley, but I really think that this was a really not a not a fair move, not keeping things on an up and up, in my opinion. Because when you look at what's been going on in the last 3 years and the recruiting situation, I mean, we had Juju, South Carolina was in Juju's top three. You had Jazzy Davidson, South Carolina was in Jazzy's, I think, top two, and then you had Kennedy Smith, who was the number three. Well, I forget what she was, number three or number six, one of them. And she was on Don Staley's list too, and USC got them all. So I think, you know, that hurt the South Carolina brand, in my opinion, as far as Don Staley's concerned. And for all of you guys think that it's regarding players, this is a Don Staley move. This is a Don Staley chess move because that program at South Carolina, in my opinion, is not really about the players. It's about Don Staley. Don Staley is the brand there at South Carolina. And if Don Staley's brand gets hurt, she's going to do whatever she needs to do to fix that. And in this sense, I thought it was messy. I thought it was, just her trying to hurt the USC brand because she couldn't win the recruits. So what better way to do that? And that's take Delhi, who's probably one of the best recruiters in the nation, and say, hey, come on this team because we're really the winning team. I think, to be perfectly honest and to keep it straightforward, this wasn't Delhi going just to go. This was a Don Staley chess move to do what she could to really limit USC's recruiting efforts in continuing to build a program because her brand is hurt. Not her brand being South Carolina, her brand being Don Staley. This is a Don Staley, you're hurting me. You're hurting my image right now. So I'm going to fix that right now by taking Delhi from you.
Yeah, we're not necessarily saying whether the motivation is good or bad. It's just that was the motivation. That's your sense of why the move was made. I guess in terms of a follow-up, two items really. One is that USC has a home and home with South Carolina the next two seasons, so obviously that's going to spice things up certainly. But also, there are some prominent Gamecocks in the portal. Does this perhaps change the equation in any way in terms of USC's ability to get them, or perhaps other top programs' ability to get them? Or was this move, do you think, maybe an attempt to kind of win back? Like players enter the portal, sometimes they recant. They go back to the school that they came from. Do you think that there's any of that in play with this move to get Wendell Farrell by Don Staley?
No. I mean, if you're talking about
Yeah.
Fuwali, she's not going back to South Carolina. You know, That's a whole nother issue that I don't want to talk about again. And again, I will say it's not about the players, it's about Don Staley. And when people really start to understand that, then they'll start seeing, they'll get out of the funnel vision lens and really look at the complete lens of what Don Staley has built. You know what I mean? And if you saw her on the sidelines during the final game of UConn, you could see it. She was really distraught. She was really hurt because it's her image that's on the line. It's her image. You know what I mean? So I don't think, for Wiley, she needs to go where she's going to get playing time. You remember she's got a shoe deal with Under Armour. You know what I mean? And Steph Curry doesn't want a player that has a shoe deal with Under Armour sitting on the bench only getting 18 minutes a game. So it's a business. It's a business as well as Wiley deserves better. So she's not going back to South Carolina. The other person that's in the portal is their Sakima Walker, which is a post player. She's she's not that impressive in my opinion. But so I just don't see, it'll start helping for next year's recruitment. But then again, you know, Wendell Farrell was really good about keeping West Coast players in the West Coast. And so it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to change his recruiting dynamics in the South, because the South is a totally different mental thought process. And now, you're going to be asked to recruit players from the South to South Carolina, or from the West Coast to South Carolina. Kids from the West Coast, you rarely see them going to South Carolina, because the South is so different culturally. Just like you don't see a lot of the East Coast kids coming west, because it's all culture driven. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I wish Delhi good luck. Like I said, this is nothing against Delhi. I mean, he's the man. He's a real cool cat. I love him to death, and he was a good coach for USC. But this is more about, in my opinion, Don Staley making a major chess move because she couldn't get the players that she originally wanted. And that's basically it. She couldn't get the players that she originally wanted, so she decided that she was going to be messy. And she out of all the coaches she could have got, she came in and recruited Delhi. So that's, if you guys study Don Staley, you know, that's Don Staley's MO. So, you know, it is what it is.
All right. Unless there's anything else we want to touch on with that story, we can move on to the WNBA draft this past Monday. And of course, Kiki Iriafen, top 5 pick, and Rhea Marshall, top 25 pick, second round. Both very good results for USC women's basketball. And for those who do not yet know this, WNBA season starts in the middle of May, the first weekend of the WNBA regular season, Sunday, May 18th, 10 a.m. in LA, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We have Kiki Iriafen and the Washington Mystics going to Connecticut to play Rhea Marshall and the Connecticut Sun. So they will go head to head first weekend of the WNBA regular season. Cece Clay, your reactions to the landing spots, the fits in Washington and Connecticut, and how you think these two WNBA journeys are going to begin for two great Trojans.
I think both of them will stick because their rosters are limited right now. Unless somebody comes into training camp and does a phenomenal job, I just see both of them sticking on their rosters. With Connecticut, I think they only have 7 or 8 players right now, so Kiki's going to stick on that roster, and I think that she's going to be very effective there with what she can do. I think that her game will open up a little bit more, and she'll feel a little bit more freer. The one thing that I worry about Kiki, um, and I don't think she'll have to worry about it too much in Connecticut, was that with Kiki, when she played for Stanford and USC, again, addressing the fact that she was never considered to be the number one player until she had to be. So like when Cameron Brink, and two examples of that is when Cameron Brink got hurt against Iowa State, Kiki just filled the shoes and got 42 points. Or Cameron Brink fouled out, I'm sorry. And then when Juju got hurt, Kiki just stepped up and played that role. My question is Kiki ever going to get to the point mentally where she believes in herself to say, hey, I'm that girl. I don't have to wait for the number one person to get hurt or to foul out for me to step up my game. I can do this. And so that's my only concern with Kiki is her ability to take that mindset that she is good enough to be the dog that she can be. Something has to a switch has to be flipped with her on that. But I think that she will do really well in Connecticut.
Washington.
Or yeah, Washington. I'm sorry, Washington. I get them mixed up. Rhea went to Connecticut. They're right next door to each other.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so I think that she'll be a really good fit there.
All right.
And
So
then
my
Rhea, okay,
follow-up,
yeah.
yeah. Before we do Rhea in Connecticut, let's follow up with Kiki in Washington. To me, and I looked at the Mystics roster. It's a pretty young roster, and of course, they had three top six picks. So there are three prime players they're going to be bringing in as rookies. To me, and last year, Washington struggled when Brittany Sykes, the point guard, was injured. She missed a large portion of the season. But like that's the veteran point guard who can really knit things together with the Mystics. I think Kiki's landing spot in Washington is really good precisely because there's a seasoned veteran point guard who's going to kind of show her the ropes and will also know how to get her the ball at the right spot, whether it's in the post, wing, baseline. I think that makes Washington a really good fit for Kiki Iriafen. Your thoughts on Brittany Sykes and how she fits into the larger puzzle for the Mystics?
Man, I was mad when they traded her from the Sparks or when she left the Sparks because I'm a Brittany Sykes fan. She's long and I'm a big guard fan, just like USC seems to be. Um, so I like those long and lanky guards that are slippery. And so Brittany Sykes is really a good player and she's silently good. People don't give her the credit that she deserves, and I think she'll be able. Um, and Shakira Austin, they have Shakira Austin as well as the other big on their team. And so and Aaliyah Edwards, right? They have Aaliyah Edwards. So they have Aaliyah Edwards from UConn, Shakira Austin, and now they're bringing in Kiki. Aaliyah Edwards and Kiki are alike to me in many ways, except I think Kiki has a little bit better mid-range shot. But I think Brittany's going to be able to take those rookies under her wing and be able to help them. Again, my only concern with Kiki now that she's at the pro level is being able to let that inner beast out and not being afraid to take some of the limelight because she's not considered a number one. You know, that's my only concern with Kiki. She's just got to go play and not worry about if she's one or two or whatever the case may be.
One another follow up with Kiki and the Mystics. Sanaya Citron from Notre Dame went at number three, right
Yep.
ahead of Kiki, and then they also had a number six pick coming in. How do you think those three top six rookies are going to work together? How do you see maybe the Mystics arranging their rotation to accommodate the rookies, but also find the right fits and make sure all three of them are integrated into the lineup? How do you think that's going to work?
To be honest with you, they have a new coach, right? So I don't know what kind of system this coach is going to run. So, I can't wait to see them play their first game so I can understand what kind of system that they're going to run defensively. What are they going to do? Are they going to be a defensive minded team first? Or are they going to be a running gun team? What are they doing? They have rim runners. They have rim runners in Shakira Austin and Aaliyah Edwards, and Kiki is a rim runner. Sonia Citron is a really good fit for them. She's good defensively, but she's just one of those people that will do anything that you ask her to do. She's very efficient. So I can't say, what I expect to see out of all of them or how they'll mix in together because I haven't seen them play together or the type of style that this team is going to be doing moving forward. But I'm anxious to see how they do fit in the bigs together, and what the rotation is going to be with Kiki and Shakira and Aaliyah Edwards. And then if Sonia Citron, is she going to play a three or are they going to have her play, some two? What are they, what position is she going to play? So it's going to be interesting to see it. But they have an awfully young team, so they're going to be fun to watch.
All right, let's now move to Rhea Marshall with the Connecticut Sun. And I think the main point as we dig into Rhea's outlook in Connecticut is that all five starters from last season's WNBA semifinal team gone. This is a complete teardown rebuild. This is going to be nothing like last season's team. And so, on one hand, that's a lot of uncertainty for Rhea Marshall to deal with. Like she's not entering a team with all these proven veterans. They all scattered. They all went to different WNBA teams. But the good side is Rhea Marshall should get a lot of minutes. She's not going to be stuck on the bench in her rookie season. So that has to be pretty
Yeah.
exciting for her.
I thought, to be honest with you, I thought Rhea was going to go. I said she would go in the second round, but I thought she was going to go higher. I thought Dallas would take her because Chris Colclains knows Rhea, the coach for Dallas, because he used to coach at SC. So I saw her going at 14 to Dallas, and when they picked Madison Scott from Ole Miss over Rhea, I was like, that's interesting because she's not as tall. She doesn't protect the rim as well as Rhea does. And then, Rhea fell to 25. But I think that where she fell to, with the WNBA now, it really doesn't matter in the one or two rounds. Where you go, it's the team that you're going to, and if there's going to be a fit, so you have teams like the Aces, they're trying to fill out their roster too, but usually they have a full roster, so they can only take one person and they draft all these other people and then they don't make it. With the team that Kiki and Rhea Marshall went to, they have a really good shot of sticking on. Kiki will definitely, and I really think Rhea will stick because when I saw the phone call on Instagram or all over social media, Washington looked like they were really, really happy to get Rhea. And I think that Rhea is going to go out there and she's going to impress everybody just with her defense alone. Offensively, she has to develop. And everybody knows that there's no if, ands, buts about that. There's no hiding that. She has to develop her footwork. She has to develop her mid range. She just has to develop offensively. But defensively, she's going to be able to play a role that's going to be able to help those teams out, help that team out this year with the way she protects the rim.
And this is the big thing that a lot of people have to remember about the WNBA as it relates to rookies. They have basically no time from the end of their college season to the start of training camp and their first season. In the NBA, you have the draft in June and you start the season in October. You have the summer to really ramp up, get to know your organization. WNBA, it's just go because there's just a month between the draft and the start of the regular season. There's just 2 weeks between the end of the draft and the preseason and the start of training camps. It's such a small amount of time, and we all remember Caitlin Clark struggling a lot in the first weeks of the WNBA season because you have no turnaround time basically. So with that in mind, for Rhea Marshall, I would think Connecticut's coaching staff are just going to say, "Hey, just do your thing on defense. We are not going to rush you with your timetable in terms of your offensive game. That's going to be the work in progress. Just defend, rebound, like that's going to be like the first month and a half, like in May and June, just do your thing on defense and rebounding, and we'll get around to the offense in July, August as the season goes along." How do you think Rhea Marshall's going to manage that mentally, knowing that she's going to be thrown into the fire? Like, how should she manage expectations? What can she kind of lean on as she goes right to the pro game?
Knowing Rhea, with the personality that she has and just the gratitude for everything, she's just going to be there and taking it all in. Because Rhea, if we've talked about this before, but if you know her upbringing, and how grateful she was for everything USC provided for her, it's going to be the same going into the pros. I mean, she's just such a humble kid, a humble young woman who wants to do the right thing for her family, who wants to do the right thing for herself. And I think that she's going to go into this like a sponge. Now you got to remember, Ray has played with people that are pros. She's played with Kiki, she plays with Juju, she plays with star players. So she'll be able to go into the W and fit right in a role playing with star players around her and doing whatever's asked of her to help the star players around her be better for the team. So I can't wait. That's the one person I'm excited to watch. I want to see her develop. I want to see, I just want to see her get better. Like 3 years from now, I think we're going to see a totally different Rhea Marshall in the WNBA.
What should we set forth in terms of expectations for year one? Are we thinking about stats? Are we talking about developing a particular component of their games? As they end their rookie season in September or whenever that is, what should they be walking away with from year one? Is it a team accomplishment? Just, give one item, talking point, goal that Kiki and Rhea should have for themselves in their respective situations in Washington and Connecticut.
With Rhea, I think one goal is to develop her um, game around the rim, and her footwork around the rim. And I think that she's going to be with some developmental coaches and teammates that are going to help her achieve that. So, from where she is now to the end of the season, I want to see her make layups around the basket. And that's the goal that everybody should have for Rhea. Make layups around the basket after you get the rebound. And for Kiki, like I said, just, for her growth, I want to see her how many minutes that she's going to average in the W her first year. I'm hoping that she averages at least 10 to 15 minutes, maybe more, but I'm thinking 15 minutes in the W. And I want to see her, um, you know, establish her mid-range game more so than she did in college, and make her layups too.
Let's talk about minutes, because one thing that's part of pro basketball that isn't part of college basketball, except for conference tournaments, that's the only exception, is, playing back to back. And sometimes having like 3 games in like 5 nights. I remember the WNBA having some of those ridiculous schedule setups, but like that's part of the deal in pro sports. It still happens on a few occasions. Any concerns or things for uh, Kiki and Rhea to kind of either manage or be mindful of in terms of, you obviously you want to be a star as a rookie, or at least you want to make a big splash, a big impact. But on the second night of a back-to-back, it's less about being a star. It's more about managing your body, knowing this is new. Any advice for Kiki and Rhea as they begin to handle that part of their basketball experience, something that's not a regular, constant part of college basketball?
Honestly, I think that both Ray and Kiki aren't looking to go into the WNBA to have their star splash moment. I just really don't think that about them because they know that they're not a Caitlin Clark or Paige Beckers. I think with both of them, with Rhea managing her minutes, it'll be a lot easier because she did it during the college season. Like she averaged 20, 25 minutes a game, sometimes less than that during the season. So I think she's going to be able to manage her minutes, and it won't be that hard for her. With Kiki, depending on how many minutes she gets, she's going to have to manage her body, and she's going to have to manage her mental, during this time because it's going to be, you know, going from the college game to the W. It's just like going from high school to college your first year. It's an adjustment. The game is a lot faster. It's a lot more physical. So I think both of these young ladies, once they play their first couple games and they understand the physicality of it, their mindset's going to have to change about what they're doing um, as far as resting their bodies. But I think both of them are going into it knowing that they're going to have to rest their bodies, and then again, they have the some veteran leadership around them that'll take them and manage, help them manage their time. But I think the trainers at USC did a really good job of that, especially with them understanding their bodies, hydration levels, with their hydration testing and so on and so forth.
Sunday, May 18th, Kiki Iriafen and the Washington Mystics at Rhea Marshall and the Connecticut Sun. You want to circle that date on your calendars. All right, Cece, as we continue with our show, I know you have a YouTube video on USC women's basketball's newest transfer. There's also the portal. Just any other thoughts you want to be sure to hit on as we help you promote what you have going on.
Yeah, the portal is crazy. I mean, I did a video on it and it's still crazy. And the one thing that I forgot to mention in my video was that, um, the side of the players, because a lot of these players don't go in the portal because they want to. There is a percentage of players that are asked to go in the portal because coaching is going a different direction and so on and so forth. So to those players, I wish you the best of luck. Now, I will say, I think this is going to change the dynamics of the portal quickly with the dollar revenue that's involved because what you're going to see now, all these players that are going for dollars and not going for long-term success, but they're going for the quick hit. If these players are making, say, like 150, 200K a year, and they don't provide what they're supposed to provide, they don't live up to that money, it'll just be like a regular job and they're going to get fired. So if you're coming in as a portal transfer and say you do a $250,000 deal for 2 years or for 1 year, even though you haven't signed an agreement, if that first year somebody that's a four, like a fourth person on the bench or whatever, just an example, somebody that is behind you, let's put it like that, somebody that's behind you comes in and plays better than you, but you're getting 250K and they're getting 50K, you're gonna be out of a job.
Mhm.
So I think that players are going to have to get smart and their advisors are going to have to get smart because that's the way it's going. Because why would you continue to pay somebody 250K when they're not living up to it? They got funny with the money, right? So they got all happy with the money and decided not to play to their full capability. And so I think you're going to see that's going to start happening in the next year or two, where if players aren't doing living up to the money that they're being paid, coaches are going to be like, get out of here, especially if there's no contract signed per se. There's a contract involved with as far as how much money they're supposed to get, but I don't think that they have any tangibles along with those that money. It's just a 250K NIL deal with nothing attached to it. No goals, no, you need 50 steals a month or whatever the case may be. So I really think the portal is going to change sooner rather than later when it comes to players living up to the potential that they're being paid.
Here's my follow-up on that. Do you think that most of the either agents or representatives for these athletes, do you think that they're primarily just business people, or do you think that they are basketball people as well? Because what you're really saying in terms of what the athletes need, to get maximize their revenue earning potential, they better know what roster or situation will give them the best chance of playing the extended minutes and having the fuller role, which will enable them to live up to their any NIL deals and compensation they might get. So it seems what you're telling me underneath the surface, Cece, is that these agents need to know the roster situations at programs. It's not as though they should be negotiating for money. I mean, that's certainly a huge part of it, but the people representing these athletes, they need to know the roster fits so that they can be accurate in terms of helping their players land at spots where they will maximize their opportunities to get minutes and live up to contracts.
Absolutely. You would think that, right? But then again, like I said, there are great agents that actually care about the players, that are licensed, that understand this world because they've been doing it professionally for years on the other professional level with NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, soccer, whatever. Then you have those representatives that are coming on now that aren't licensed, just saying, I'm going to represent you and I can do this, that, and the other. That I don't think they really, it's about the money, right? And what they're going to make off the top. And most of these agents, so-called agents, are making 30% off the top. Now, do the players have a say? I don't know. Because nowadays it's like you have to go through the agent to get the player even on campus. So if a player doesn't have, if a player is using their parent as a representative, that might be an easier route to get the player on campus. But the agent is dictating where the player goes to visit. It's crazy. But here's an example I want to bring up that just happened. You have LSU, right? LSU is being recruited by, LSU is recruiting Sarah Williams. Right now, there was a post that they were going really all out for Sarah Williams. They've already signed Kate Caval, and they didn't go all out for Kate Caval like they're doing for Sarah Williams. And they just signed Joyner, another big, right? So that's two bigs or a four and a five, and now Sarah Williams. If I was Kate Caval, for one, I'd be like, what's going on? Because you're going all out for Sarah Williams. You didn't do this for me, and yet I signed. So that's one part of it. And two, what are the coaches telling these kids? So if you have Sarah Williams and Kate Caval and Joyner, who's playing? Is it going to be Sarah Williams and Joyner? Is it going to be Sarah Williams and Kate Caval? What are you playing? What are you telling the players to get them on campus to commit? And if you are telling them something that it isn't true, that affects their revenue because they're not going to be able to do what's expected of them within the parameters of the revenue that they're being given. So it's crazy on all sides right now, and I'm just hoping that coaches are being honest with these kids and setting up good expectations. And I just hope that these agents are doing right by these kids and not making it about, well, if I get you a $250,000 revenue that's tied to this type of marketing, I'm going to get 30% off the top of the marketing deal. You know what I mean? So I want you to, they'll never tell the athlete that, but they're going to tell that athlete, they're going to steer that athlete in that direction more so. So it's a mess right now.
And what you've just said really helps explain why players commit and then decommit days or weeks apart for like precisely the situation you just outlined at LSU. Kate Koval, and who, she hasn't decommitted, but I'm just saying this illustrates why we see decommitments right after initial commitments. Rosters change, situations change, and oh, this is not what I signed up for. I'm going to go back into the portal. That really explains why, for people who don't understand why this stuff happens, you've really explained why this happens. So that's a really interesting reality, part of our new world with NIL and the transfer portal. So you have the YouTube video on Kara Dunn. Anything else going on at your YouTube channel or your Substack? Anything else you'd like to promote?
Substack, I do have an article written. I just haven't put it out there yet because I've been so busy with my regular job this week. I was traveling all week long. So, but I will get that out there probably tomorrow. The YouTube video on Kara Dunn is done. That's funny. Nice play on words. And and I'll be uploading that as soon as we get off this podcast, and then this podcast will be up and running shortly too. I do have one more thing to say about the whole South Carolina thing, and like I said, I wish Delhi the best of luck. The only thing that upsets me about the whole thing is, him and Lindsay have been together for over 10 years. And, I would have liked to see him leave to go get a head coaching job instead of going to a rival, for all the reasons that Don wanted him to leave USC to go to the University of South Carolina. So, and like I said, this is not a hit or a negative on anybody. Dawn Staley is. I'm just keeping it real. Dawn Staley is Dawn Staley. That is who she is. And if you don't understand who she is, just keep paying attention to who Dawn Staley is. It's not South Carolina women's basketball that is the brand. It is Dawn Staley that is the brand. And if Dawn Staley, the brand, gets affected, she's going to do whatever she needs to do to fix her brand. So that's why this move was made. And good luck. And I'm sure Lindsay has got some great prospects that she's going to bring in that are going to shine. So
For every door that closes, another one opens. That's how this business works. Like we all know the deal. I mean, we haven't even talked about this, Cece, but London Jones, Janiah Barker leaving UCLA. I mean, it really reinforces the point you've been making on previous shows in previous weeks. This is not about coaches failing to create the right culture. This is a business. You've been saying it, you've been consistent about it, and you're absolutely correct. Like, if Corey Close's culture was the reason, these players are leaving UCLA, like that would not make sense. Like they made a Final Four, they had more success than ever before. It's really hard to say that is a culture problem. It's just about business. It's just
and
about
here's one thing I will
getting
say about that.
opportunities.
Yeah, Abe, and here's one thing I want to say about that. And if you pay attention to the portal like I do, constantly for other reasons. But if you watch the whole UCLA debacle, Avery Kane went into the portal. Avery Kane was recruited by SC as well, is Brooklyn Chamblin's best friend from Santa Maria. She was a ball player out of Santa Maria. She decides to go to UCLA at the last minute. She goes into the portal right after this season. No playing time. Never even got on the court unless UCLA was blowing out a team. Within 3 days, she had signed with Oregon. My point is, she was contacted before she went into the portal. And that's the messiness. I, I'm not going to, okay, let me take that back because I don't want to get myself in trouble for saying this. I have to premise this by saying, in my opinion, I think
Yeah.
she had to be contacted before she jumped in the portal. And why I say that is because there's no way you can jump in the portal and in 3 days later, you're committed and you haven't had any playing time. Unless Oregon recruited her out of high school, which I don't know, maybe that was the case. I don't know, but still, within 3 days, you had a deal done with no other opportunity to go look elsewhere. Because there are a lot of other schools that I'm sure recruited Avery Kane, and 3 days later she had committed to Oregon. So in my opinion, that's where the messiness is of all this. Kids are being contacted before they jump in the portal. Kids are being contacted when they're not even thinking about going into the portal. So and then again, like I said, there are kids that are asked to go into the portal. And I have much respect for those kids and I hope that they land somewhere. And it could be because of culture differences, it could be because there's a new coach. But to those kids, I'm sure they're looking for the right thing. They're just looking for fit. They're looking for a place to play basketball, to show their efforts. For an example, Aaliyah Gales, who was going to Utah State, much smaller school, but more power to her. She'll be able to play and show her skill set where it probably wasn't a fit at USC. And then Dom, who's going to Syracuse, she's going back home. She's going to be closer to her family. So there are those stories and there are those touching situations where kids are going into the portal for the right reason. They want to go where they'll be supported, where they'll be loved, where there's a fit. So there's three different dynamics to this. There's kids that are doing it for the right thing. There's kids that are doing it for the money and the prestige, and there's agents that are doing it because they have all the control.
So many different situations. And of course, the Nico Iamaliava football saga, with dad basically driving the bus. Like we don't think that Nico Iamaliava himself is orchestrating this. That's just basic logic there. And we both, Cece and I, and hopefully I think most of the people listening to this podcast, we really feel for the athletes who aren't the drivers of their situations. They're being tossed about by other people, other forces. And of course, when you're 19, 20 years old, you want to please your parents, you want to please other people who are putting dollar signs in front of you. And it has to be just a wrenching, difficult, emotionally fraught process to try and learn how to stand on your own and make your own life decisions when you have so many other people around you trying to get what they want out of you instead of trying to make your life better for you and serving you first. We
Okay,
see
so
that a
so
lot.
so Matt, what if you're a senior in college, right? And you have one more year as a grad because you graduated in 3 years. So, you can play for 4 years now. So you decide that you're going to jump in the transfer portal because not because you're not content of where you are, but because you think you can go make bigger dollars at a power school, at a power five school. And luckily, a Power Five school loves the way you play. And they'll say, okay, yeah, we're going to offer you 150K or whatever the number is. And you come play for us your last year. And then before the season starts or mid-season, you have a horrific injury and you tear your ACL. And God forbid, we don't want anything that to happen. I'm just trying to make a point here. You hurt your knee. Now, that 250K is not going to last long, and especially in the environment that we live in today. So you hurt your knee. What are your chances that you're going to make a pro team now? You have to build back your knee. You have to, so that's the one thing that I want these kids to think about. They're thinking about short term. But 250K is a lot to a lot of 18, 19, and 20 years, and a lot to some parents. 250K is a lot of money. It's that instant gratification. But I just think kids and their advisors have got to do a better job at looking at long-term success and how to sustain, an income rather than short-term gratification when that money can be gone like that with an injury. Or if you don't live up to what you're supposed to be doing if you're a junior in college and the coach says, we're not going to pay you next year because, you just weren't that good.
I think really the key point here is, you need people who are going to tell you the truth about the kind of player, the kind of prospect you are. If you really do have a pro future, then you want someone to be able to tell you that. But even more importantly, you need someone to be able to tell you, you know what? I would love it if you were a pro prospect, but you know what? You're not. People who can be honest about that in your inner circle as an athlete, because that to me is would determine whether you push through injury, you go through rehab, you spend the money involved in that process to pursue a playing career, or you pivot to, coaching, being an agent, being a broadcaster. Like that is the thing that so many athletes need to be cognizant of. Like if the NBA, if a WNBA or NFL dream is realistic, then yes. But if it's not realistic, you can't have someone in your inner circle selling you a vision that's never really realistic. Knowing your limitations, and so for some people, we need to be aspirational, and we need to push through, see if we can hit it big. But that's not everybody. And sometimes you know it's a lot like in coaching. Being a coordinator, you get paid a lot for being a coordinator. You don't have to chase the head coaching job. You can be sure that, hey, I'm just going to be a great coordinator for 25 years. That's a lot of money, job security. I don't have to chase the siren song of wanting to be a head coach. It's very similar. You can adjust it to these 20-year-old athletes in college, knowing what you can do, knowing what you can reach for, knowing when to pivot to the different career paths. It's really that you need people to be telling you the truth and being honest about those kinds of evaluations. Any other final thoughts, Cece, as we close down our show?
Thank God it's Friday. It's been a long week for me, and this portal stuff is driving me crazy right now. So always on my phone, always, it's crazy right now.
And I read a week ago that like 80% of the prospects in the portal have of the players who initially went into the portal have not yet made up their minds. So for USC fans who are maybe freaking out, I know the Kara Dunn acquisition kind of settled things down a little bit, but I know there are still plenty of fans worried, about why is this going so slowly? Well, it seems to me is that the vast majority of portal players, they are taking their time to make up their minds. Now that not Avery Kane for Oregon,
Here's here's
but most of them are still taking the time to make their decisions. So like it's like the clock isn't ticking that much for USC. Obviously, you want to see the program land, some of the really big fish, but it's not as though like, oh, they have to get it done in the next few weeks, in the next few days, right?
yeah, here's what I will say. Last year, Kiki EFN and TVO didn't sign till after the portal closed. We pretty much knew that we were going to be getting those two players, but still, they didn't sign until after the portal closed. Here's the other thing that I will say. I'm just going to smile. Be patient, guys. Don't worry about it. We'll be all right. Trust me when I say that. We'll be fine. That's all I can say.
Because we have Lindsey Gottlieb as our head coach.
Yep.
And so that's a reminder as we close down our show. If you haven't watched
And
our
her
podcast
nickname
with
is now
Cece and Lindsey Gottlieb going one on one, be sure to catch that
Big
conversation with
Lens.
Cece and Lindsey.
Her name is Big Lens now. They call her on the timeline. It's Big Lens. So, hey, you guys, make sure you watch this video on Cara Dunn. Um, I got a little bit passionate. Y'all know me, so I had to taper it down a little bit. I kept talking to myself, telling myself to calm down. But I got excited when I was watching her film breakdown. So I hope you guys get excited with me. And just so you know, for every transfer portal transfer kid that we land, I'll be doing a breakdown. Uh, so get excited for that. But hey, you guys, don't worry.
That's on your Twitter page. Don't worry, be happy.
That's
Always
right.
a good thing to carry through life. All right, that's our show. We certainly covered a lot of ground once again with Cece Clay. And as she just said, when there's a new USC portal pickup, we'll be here to talk about it. Cece's going to do a YouTube video on it. So stay tuned and watch this space here on the Trojans Wired podcast. Thanks again for listening.
Fight on.